Good afternoon, everybody. I'm your host, Natalie Bott, and this is It's All Light. Today, I'm very excited. We have a lovely guest, Miss Annabelle Sorrensen.
Hi, thanks for
So,
having
I
me.
actually met Annabelle years ago. I was invited from a friend who was her brother's friend to go to her cabin in Park City. And I didn't know anybody, and I met a few friends, and I met Annabelle, and we've seen each other throughout the years. And I've been so impressed with Annabelle from day one, and you'll find out just how impressive she is as we get talking about our topic today. But one thing I've learned about Annabelle is that she is very determined and also just knows what she wants and is willing to work for it. But a little bit about Annabelle. We'll start out asking her a question, and the question of the day is, what is your favorite food?
Hmm. Well, that's all really nice things for you to say
it
about me first. That's really sweet. And we're happy to have you at a party. Rager, that was a
was.
rager.
There was karaoke.
And my favorite food, well, because that's like a really broad
mm-hmm.
topic, I'm just thinking, like, what's the first thing that comes to my mind? Dark chocolate peanut butter
Oh
cups from
yeah.
Trader
Oh yeah.
Joe's.
Those things are the
They
best.
just can't go
I found the mini ones. I like the mini ones more because I'm more of a savory
wrong.
person than a sweet person, but of course I need my sweet. But they're like smaller than a penny. They're so good. Which maybe
Yes.
I eat more of those than the other ones, but they're so yummy. Oh, anything from Trader Joe's, you
So yummy.
really can't go wrong.
True. You should just do a Trader
Oh
Joe's
yeah.
podcast where someone
No,
talks about their
honestly, I
favorite
started doing
things.
that. I did it for a day. I was gonna maybe do it on my Instagram more because I saw a friend do that. It lasted a day. But
No,
my friends do
well,
Trader
that's
Joe's
okay.
parties, and everyone brings their favorite thing from Trader Joe's, and usually by seasonal. Anyways, yeah. I
Yeah,
need to do a Trader Joe's run this
please.
week. With dark chocolate, do you also love 90% cacao? Do you eat dark chocolate that's super, super dark or just average?
Yeah, I mean, average. I do drink a drink called
Oh
Creo Brew that's,
yeah.
like, straight
Yeah,
cacao beans that are
yeah, yeah.
ground and roasted in bread. That's pretty
We
bitter.
we s-
I
I
like
need
dark
to try that. We sell it at
chocolate.
Redmond, and I have been meaning to try it because we have a coffee brew machine at work, and I've been meaning to brew it.
Yes!
We'll have to chat.
Yes, brew it. Special limited edition right now, Highlander Grog,
Ooh.
best
Oh,
flavor they've
really?
ever made.
Okay. Take note, everybody.
I'll just
Creo
try
brew. CRIO.
it. Not a paid ad.
Okay. Awesome. I'm going to share a few more fun facts about Annabelle. She grew up in Santa Barbara, California, and she's currently there right now. Are you visiting family and just hanging out, enjoying
Uh-huh.
the
Yeah,
sunshine?
just hanging out,
And
getting away from the
yeah, and you went to BYU. And what did you
uh-huh.
study?
Graduated. Human
Human
development,
development,
family
family
studies.
studies. And then shortly after, you went through life coaching training and certification.
I did that actually
Oh,
while I was
yeah.
at BYU
Okay.
as well.
And tell us what got you into that.
Well, I've always just really wanted to help people in like a practical application. I kind of knew there was something that I was missing where I was like, there's got to be a way for me to have more power to be able to accomplish what I
Yeah.
want to in life. And I knew I was missing something. So I kind of started to research life coaching.
Mhm.
And I found a podcast called The Life Coach School, and I started listening to it, and that was in
Wow.
2018. So I started listening to it, and it just started like changing my life. I was like, whoa, like other people aren't responsible for my feelings, and like you can create your goals, and you can just like start thinking things because your brain is just there. Like it'll think what you tell it to.
Mhm.
And it's all an hallucination either way. Anyways, all these like concepts that were just like blowing my mind and taking my life from average to like beyond average. And I was just felt so empowered
I
by it.
love that.
And then I was like, oh, well, someone has to teach my friends.
Mhm.
So I guess it's gonna be
Yeah,
me.
you're like, if I'm putting in the
So then
research for myself, you might as well share it and help others, right?
yes, yes. And I've just always really wanted to help people. And obviously therapy is really important and powerful, but it didn't really sit perfect
Yeah.
for me. And so this felt like something where I would have a greater reach and be able to speak to people and
Yeah.
resonate with them more in
Yeah,
that
I feel
area.
like sometimes
So
therapy, at least from my point of view, is that it's more targeted toward a specific experience in your life affecting you and working through that. Whereas life coach is just more
Yeah,
life in general. I've experimented with both,
yeah,
and I find different purposes for both of them. Um, yeah,
totally.
I've taken a break from therapy just because I got new insurance and then just haven't been willing to change it up. But I just scheduled it actually for next week, so I'm excited to talk to my therapist about just things that go into my life. I usually keep a note in my phone, be like, oh yeah, like I was very reactive or anxious or I don't know what, like certain scenarios to talk through with my
Yeah,
therapist. But then like life coaching, from what I've studied or podcasts I've listened to, it kind of helps you just create the life you want to live. And like, what does that look like?
yeah,
And rewiring your brain. And so, yeah,
yeah, it
so
kinda
cool.
takes you from the present takes you from the like, the present creating the future as opposed to therapy is more of, like, let's look at the past and how
Yeah.
that's impacting
Hmm.
you now, and, yeah, coaching is more, let's look at the now and change it to create
Right.
the future you
Right.
want.
No, yeah, totally. I think they totally work hand in hand. And it just is case by case basis depending what you need and but I feel like you
Totally.
could start with life coaching and then it helps you decide, oh, maybe I do need more help in this area as you start to become more
Yeah,
self-aware. um
mhm.
I'm gonna keep sharing fun facts about you because you left me a lot of fun ones, and I know we're already jumping into our topic.
I don't even remember one of those,
And we'll
so
get back to all these important
can't wait.
things, but I just loved that you said you have two different thumbs, and then
Oh,
you can show it. This will be
I
on
do.
YouTube too.
Oh, yep, I have
Just
2
different
different
shaped
thumbs.
thumbs.
It's actually called, like it's called something, it's called, like,
Oh, whoa,
brachydactyl,
really?
and it's like I call myself a dinosaur
Just two
sometimes,
different types
but
of thumbs.
whatever. It's one in a
That's
million.
amazing. I think that's a very fun fact. And then you said
It's fun.
it reminds you the ability for coexistence, that there's no right way. We can have a little bit of everything, and that you are unique and you love being different. I love that. I feel like my hair does that for me. Like, I think God gave us
Yeah,
all little things about ourselves for us to tap into, like
as reminders to
totally.
make it and I think that's actually a really interesting point because we naturally make things mean stuff about us, right? So it's like, "Oh, I have 2 different thumbs, that could mean that I'm weird and, like, there's
We
something
labor
wrong with
ourselves,
me,"
yeah.
or I can make it mean yeah, or I can choose to make it mean that I'm unique and different, and so is everybody
Mhm.
else, right? And I can make it mean something great
Yeah.
about me, and that obviously runs right in that thought choice that we'll dive into of the impact that can have on my
Right,
life.
and the positive self-talk, I'm sure, is a big thing you focus on as well because I don't know, I love the quotes that remind you of, like, would you say that to your friend? Then why are you saying it to yourself? Like, that stops me in my
Mhm.
tracks, and I have to realize, "Oh, yeah, why would I ever tell my friend her belly looks a little chubbier than normal?" Because I say that to myself all the time. And I'm like, that's not very kind to
Yeah.
myself. Like, I know I'm healthy and I'm doing my best, and I just need to be like, I had a companion. I've shared this before, but like on my mission, I gained quite a bit of weight, and she would just be like, "Whoa, sister bot, tell me you're confident in your body." And I'd have to go, "I'm confident in my body." And she'd be like, "Louder." And I would like scream it at her. So, but like, it really helped me be more confident in my body. So I always just try to go back to that. Okay, enough about me. We need to jump into all the things you're passionate about. Give us like an overview of things you're passionate about, and then from there we'll focus in on a few things.
Okay, well, glad we already tapped on dark chocolate and Prio Brew. Those are 2 things
Good,
I'm
good.
passionate about. Um, I'm passionate about overall, yes, the outdoors and traveling and my family and
Yes.
sunshine and eating healthy, taking care of myself, really soaking up life and all the aspects that it has. And that's what I said. I think the biggest thing that I'm passionate about is just the richness that life has to offer. And the value we can get from it, just from the little things around us, and the value we can get from ourselves and like our own brain and the way that we interact with the
Mhm.
world is just a really fun experience for me. And it's fun for me to watch other people love their interactions with the world, especially as I coach people one on one. I get to watch them light up about their
Mhm.
interactions with other people and with the world because of the way that they're showing up. So they're proud of
Mhm.
themselves. And that's like
So
just the most beautiful
so
experience.
rewarding, huh? I wonder
Yeah,
I wonder
it's
if
pretty
this
fun.
is universal. I should ask more people, but I feel like excuse me, I feel like when anyone tries to teach someone something that they're good at or that they love, and they see others have an aha moment or they figure it out on their own, there's just like no greater reward. And I feel like that's a pretty
Yeah,
universal thing that like almost everyone would agree with. So I love that like you get to do
yeah,
that every day. And I think you can find that in your everyday based off of what you do, like not just as a life coach, but maybe in your work as you interact with certain people. It looks like you have a thought. Go ahead.
yeah. I was gonna say, and like that's the thing, right? Is we can all experience that even if our career isn't life
Mhm.
coaching, right? We can have that impact on people just by who we're
Mhm.
being, which is really fun. Where you can offer a thought to somebody, like the way that you're viewing your day, or the way that you view. Let's say, yeah, they're being hard on themselves, and you're like, you know what? That's like really valid, and I hear
Mm.
you. And like suddenly their world has changed just because of who you're being as a
Ooh.
person.
Yeah.
And I think that's the most like, we can all experience that fulfillment and
Mm.
satisfaction. It does you don't have to have, like, this huge career or this huge thing where you're, like, helping people every single day. And I think those are my types of clients that are my best clients, and the types of clients I attract the most are just the ones who wanna
Mhm.
help people on their day to day.
Yeah.
And they already are, and helping them see how they are just by who they're being is really fun. And so, yes, it is rewarding for me, but it's also amazing to help other people experience that same
Mhm.
emotion and go out and do more.
Yeah, I agree. As you were talking, I was just thinking about like everyone could do that in their own way, but something I admire about you, I've been following your Instagram and everyone I'll post her Instagram so you can follow along too. You post like almost scientific studies and you post just like very bit-sized pieces of information that can apply to everyone and anyone. And I've loved how
Yeah.
you've made that information available to others. I always screenshot your stories and I'm like, "Oh, this is so important." And I love that you take it from uh I don't know, scientific is a bad word, but you break it up in a way, yeah,
Practical.
practical. That's the word I was looking
That's
for.
like my
Yeah,
goal.
you make it very
That's
practical.
always my word. Like, how can I make this simple so somebody who doesn't know the science can
Right,
apply it
and I
right now?
love that that's how you focus on this goal of helping others just live a better life. So, tell us more about I guess life in general. Let's just start broad and what's like one of the biggest things you learned about how a person lives their life? I know.
Whoa.
This is
Well,
very broad. I'm stepping it back and then we'll zoom in.
um, so I think one of the biggest things, at least that resonated with me when I was first learning about life coaching, is I wanted to change, right? We all have
Oh
things that
yeah.
we want to change. I wanted to be less defensive. I wanted to have better habits. I wanted to have better relationships. I wanted to hit these big goals, right? I wanted to have access to my dreams and like actually think about them in a realistic way rather than just being like, oh, yeah, that sounds
Yeah.
fun. And so we all want to change, and I think we're taught our whole lives that the way to change is to tell yourself to change.
Mm.
And obviously that doesn't work because all of us still are not accomplishing all the things we want to
No, it's so
accomplish,
true.
right?
Yeah.
And so um the reason that doesn't work is because then we feel bad about ourselves. And so when I started to learn about coaching, and I started to realize that telling myself to change wasn't working, just not because I shouldn't want to change, but just because it made me feel bad because of that thought
Like
I
if
was having.
you had that vision but
And
you
then
weren't getting there. Okay.
yeah, exactly. So immediately, like, I'm telling myself to change, but I feel bad because I
Mm.
haven't changed, and it feels kind of
Mhm.
forceful. So then, like, my actions are a little bit inhibited by
Yeah.
that, right? I'm not like living from a space of it already being done.
Mm, interesting.
And so I think that as humans, like I've gathered just this cool thing that we actually can change by shifting the way that we're thinking right
Mhm.
now to that person that we want to be, as opposed to just telling ourselves to change. So I think I don't know. That's like again pretty broad, but on the aspect of our change is so possible for us,
Mhm.
and it's way easier than telling ourselves we have to change and beating ourselves into
Mhm.
it,
Interesting.
right? Like, it's way easier than
Mm.
that.
Yeah.
And it can just be thinking about, oh, how if I was already doing that, what would I be thinking? What would I be feeling?
Mm.
And that's gonna motivate your actions to a place where you're gonna have the
Mm.
fuel to actually
If
keep
I
going.
was already doing
Or
that. Interesting.
yeah, like, what would I be thinking if I wasn't mad at my
Mhm.
mom? Or what would I be thinking if I wasn't frustrated
Frustrated with
with
someone
this,
chomping
right? Like
gum, or I don't know, for me, there's, like, so many little
right,
things that I'm like,
right,
"Why is this bothering me, and should it bother me?" Like, no, it shouldn't.
right.
Like, what is that saying about
So
me?
then we
Yeah.
tell ourselves it shouldn't, but then we just have the friction.
Mm.
So it's like we can ask ourselves, or what would I be thinking if I was somebody who knew how to become less bothered by it, right? Rather than just like we try to take all these big jumps as
Mhm.
humans, and then we beat ourselves up for it. And then we try to change, and we tell ourselves we should change, and we should be different than we are, and then we just don't get where we want
Mhm.
to go, and we don't see the results we want to see.
Mm.
And it's actually like, first of all, you're great where you are because you're a human and you're always going to be having human reactions. There's never going to be a point where you don't have thoughts and feelings
Don't
that
want.
you don't want, or you're like, oh, maybe like, you're never going to have a point where you never have negative
Hmm,
thoughts and feelings because you're a human. That's like,
that's
that's
how our
mortality.
and
That's
how our
literally what
brains
fear.
are.
Yeah, and our brain is wired to look for us to change and grow and evolve, and that's exactly that reason is what I'm most passionate about is that is the best
Mhm.
news. We get to continue changing, evolving, challenging ourselves, learning, growing, but none of it's meant to be used against us. And that is kind of, I think, what originally blew my
Yeah.
mind was like, oh, all my dreams, all my things I want, all of the ways I want to improve
Mhm.
myself, none of that is a problem. And it's all actually really accessible, and it's all up to me in the way that my brain is working,
Mm.
and it's not up to time, or it's not up to this person changing, or it's not up to the fact that I'm not there yet, or that I'm not gonna be there because 'cause I'm not perfect, I'm not like Jesus, right? Like, no, none of those thoughts are serving you,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah.
So, I think when I realized that who I wanted to be wasn't a
Yeah.
problem, that that was actually a great news for me.
Mm.
That's when I just, like, started to eat up coaching. It's like, "Okay, what are all the ways I can just be living and being proud of who I am now? Because that's gonna help me be who
Right.
I wanna be in the
I
future."
think that springboard mentality is so helpful. Like, anytime I want to do something, like, I wanna have a lower screen time use on my phone, so me and the boy I'm dating are like, looking at it at the end of each day just to be aware of it, and then hopefully next week we'll,
Uh-huh.
like, put in a plan of, like, okay, the other person was $1 or whatever, to, like, make it a game, but also, like, focus on, "Okay, where am I
Mhm.
spending my time?" And, like, if I want that to change, what am I, like, replacing that with? Or how am I actually going to do this? But it's coming from a, "Oh,
Yeah.
man, I can't believe I'm on my phone. I should get off it," versus, "I want to get off my
Yes.
phone." Like, I want a life where that's
Yes.
not 7 hours on my phone every day, you know? And I
Yeah.
don't know, that mentality is hard to attach to. Okay, go ahead.
I was gonna say, and, like, what would you be thinking if you were already and this is for
Mm.
everybody listening, so
Mhm.
just like you. I'm just saying, like, what would you be thinking if you were already the person who wasn't looking at
Mm.
her phone, right? Is like, I would be thinking, "Oh, I use my time so
Or
well,"
I'm
or, "I
I'm
don't need
reading a
social
book
media."
instead.
I love reading. This is how I wanna use my time, right? I'm like, "Oh, that's those are the thoughts that are gonna be able to create that result
Mm.
consistently. Because that's the other problem with, like, just telling ourselves we should or shouldn't do something is sometimes we can do it for, like, a week,
And
and
then
then that's not
what
actually who we
stays?
are
Yeah.
because we haven't shifted our default thinking.
Our default
So,
thinking. I love that.
yeah, so we could go on and on, but I think ultimately that's, like, one of my favorite things. It's much easier to shift the way that our habits than we think it
Mhm.
is, and that was what, like, opened up so many doors for me and what dove me into life coaching. So I was like, "Oh, this
Like,
can
this
be
is
easier."
possible.
The reason it's easier is because it's up to me
Mhm.
and what's happening in my
Mhm.
brain, and it's not something that has to be solved or
Yeah. Oh, I
changed.
love that. It doesn't have to be solved, doesn't have to be changed. It's just you're in control of what you can do and what you want to do. Mhm. I love that.
Yeah.
I had another thought, but it just left, so we're gonna move on to the next point. Um,
Okay.
so once you've kind of been working toward this attitude of you can control your mind and you can control your life.
Mhm.
I mean, there's obviously things in our life we can't control, And I feel like learning what we
Mhm.
can't control helps us realize what we can control. So can you brush us up on that to contrast it?
Yes. This is one of my favorite topics, actually, and then one of my topics that, again, my
Uh-huh.
clients come to me with so often because they're these people who have, like, these amazing mindsets, and they're already awesome, and they're, like, crushing it at life, and then they're like, "I need my mindset to be perfect. Why do I feel this way?" Right?
Perfectionism.
Well, if I can just have the right mindset if I could just have the right mindset, I'd be able to do it. Or maybe I just need to change my perspective, or
Oh,
if
yeah.
I'm just positive, right? So
Mm.
all these things that we start to use our mindset against ourselves, and I think creating that coexistence, this is one of my favorite tools and skills to practice daily. I use it daily. Is okay, how can I be a human and have reactions and thoughts and
Mhm.
feelings and introduce thoughts and feelings that I want to have? And am I willing to have both? Because our brain sees very black and white. So it's like either I'm happy or I'm sad, or either I'm have my mindset or I don't have my
Mhm.
mindset. And that's one of my favorite tools to offer my clients and show them what's happening is we oftentimes judge our natural mindset or our natural reaction.
Mhm.
And so then we try to change
Yeah.
it, right? So it's like, oh, I should think different.
Or I should be
And
more
that is the
disciplined, or
very
I should do this more.
yes, yes. And it's like, well, actually, you shouldn't because you're a human. So instead of trying to be more disciplined, why don't you just do it even though it doesn't feel good?
Mhm.
Right?
Mhm.
And you can have both at the same time. Um, and kind of introducing that coexistence. So, in that vein of we, yes, we're in control, and yes, our mindset matters. One of the biggest keys to mindset is being willing to have a mind that's human
Mm.
and giving that grace and simultaneously introducing thoughts that you want to be having. So for me, I've experienced my fair share of pain. We all have experienced our fair share of
Mhm.
pain. We've all experienced life because we're all
Yeah.
humans. And for me, like, especially going through grief
Mhm.
process, I always had to have the thought, like, okay, like, I'm not gonna try to see this positively. Like, that's not gonna serve me, right? That's just gonna make me feel bad. And I don't wanna see it positively, right? My dad passed away. So
Mhm.
I'm like, I don't wanna see this
Right.
positively. But a thought that helped me was, oh, like, I'm a human too,
Mhm.
right? And this is an experience that can help me learn, it can help me grow. And as I started to think that, our brain's made to create evidence for what we're
Mm.
thinking. So then I started to see reasons for why I was learning from it, why I was growing from it,
Mm.
and how it was actually serving me in ways that I wouldn't have seen if I was so caught up in the
Mm.
pain
Mm.
or if I was trying to fix
Ooh,
the pain.
yeah. I feel like too often we wanna just fix things, right? Because I think our brain wants that, right? Our brain doesn't like pain, our brain doesn't like discomfort, and our brain wants to get us away
Yeah,
from all that and fix it. But it's sitting in that, and I love that you asked, like, what can you learn? Um, I can't imagine losing a family member, and I've been to funerals where my friends have lost family members, and the dad of this little boy spoke, and he was just like, "It sounds awful, but, like, I'm so grateful for that this happened." And that's, like, sounds so shocking, but he was already in that mindset of the blessings from learning about this and how it helped others and how it's changed their life, you know, like, of course,
yeah,
devastating and there's so much grieving in it, but there also is just a safe place we can get our minds to that doesn't take away from how hard or painful it is, but it opens it up to learning. Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
totally. Yeah, and just like to piggyback on that, like like you said, our brain is made to avoid
Mhm.
pain. So that's why our natural reaction is always to um, get away from it or make it stop, but that always makes
Mm,
it
yeah.
worse, right? So our goal as humans is to make it a safe place for ourselves to experience pain. That is what's
Mm,
gonna give you the most freedom in your life,
yeah.
right? And it's not, oh, I'm just gonna be positive all the time. That's not
Mm-mm.
the key, right? The key is creating a space where you can be experiencing and feeling safe enough to experience that. Then you can turn outward and help other people experience that. Um, and that is developed with the way that we're speaking to ourselves,
Mm,
right? And so that's also one of my favorite questions to ask, typically with my own clients is like, how is this very experience of pain or rejection or sadness or disappointment? How is this actually an opportunity for you to become more of the person you want to be?
hmm,
And they always are like, oh, well, then I can create more compassion and empathy and charity for myself,
mm.
right? And then they're so much more capable to turn outwards and do it to
'Cause you
other
kind
people.
of validate yourself or feel that compassion for yourself, and that fills you up to a point where your cup is full and you can then pour it out or it's more overflowing. There was the cutest video,
Yeah.
that my friend sent me on Instagram, and it was like a dad in a pool, and he had a jar and poured some dirt in the jar and then poured some water in the jar. And he had like a spoon, and he's like, instead of saying things to your kids like, oh, you could maybe like not do that as much, or I don't know, little nitpicky things, he started like trying to scoop the dirt out of the water. And then he was like, try these instead. And then he started pouring water into the dirty water. And then it started becoming cleaner. Instead of picking out all the dirt particles, it was like overflowing with clean water. And I was like, whoa, that was so beautiful to just how we can do
Yeah.
that to ourselves too. Like there's still going to be dirt if we try to just spoon it out, but if we try to pour in good things, then it'll overflow with good things. Anyways, I
Big
I love
facts.
visual
Yeah.
things, but
I love it.
as you were saying that, my mind was
Yes.
just thinking of that cup. So, what are some
Yeah.
like homework items that you give people to start to do these things in their daily lives? I mean, you've given us some good questions that we can start asking ourselves, but like for me, I want more action items because I struggle with all these things we're talking about. And I'm sure other people do too.
That's so funny. So, yeah, our brain is made to look at the action line always. So,
Exhibit
like,
A, everybody.
first it's always like, my actions are gonna create my results. My actions are gonna create my results. And so I'm gonna give you some actions to do in your
My
thought
thought
line.
line.
Okay?
This is what I need.
So,
Thank you.
like, yeah, so and I think asking those questions that we talked about, like, what am I
Mhm.
learning? Or um, I think for starters, if you're some of us are aware of what we're thinking, not really. None of us are really, really aware of what we're thinking because 95% of our thinking is subconscious. So if you think you know what you're thinking, you're probably not. That's just real life. Um, that's why I have a life coach. I'm always like, whoa, I didn't even realize I was
Oh
thinking
boy.
that.
Yeah.
Um, but we have over 50,000 thoughts a day.
50,000.
So you never, ever, ever are going to lose anything by just putting down on a piece of paper all of your thoughts you're having in that morning. Like that is so powerful because if you say you don't have thoughts, you always
Mhm.
have thoughts. Don't lie to
Mhm.
yourself. Or ask a question of like, what do I want this day to look like? Or what if I could choose what I want to think
Yeah.
about this day, what would I
Yeah.
think? Or if I was already if I had already accomplished this goal, what would I be thinking? Right. So there's some things like that. And I would say an action item for everybody is to write down what you're thinking when you wake up in the morning. It's called a
Mm.
thought dump.
Mhm.
You just write
Okay.
it all down on a piece of paper because then your brain can see that you're thinking things, right? Until you put it on a piece of paper, your brain just thinks it's like taking in data.
Mm.
It just thinks it's like
So much
factual.
information.
So, and reacting, and it's just like, oh, this is how the day's going, and I feel this way, and I'm having this thought. And it doesn't really realize that it's actually disconnected from you and that you're not your thoughts. It just thinks that's what's happening to you.
Mm.
And
Interesting.
so when we write down our thoughts on a piece of paper, and you can ask, yeah, like any of those questions that I said
Mhm.
before for a prompt, or you could just dump if you have something on your mind. That's another really good time to do a thought dump is if you have something on your mind and you can't get it out of your
Mm.
brain. It's like, oh, I can't make this decision. It's like, okay, write down everything that you're thinking because that's what's causing your indecision. It's not that you actually can't
Mm.
decide. It's not actually that you're indecisive or that you can't make a decision or there's too many options. It's just that you're thinking, oh, there's too many options
And
or
so
I'm
you're
indecisive,
believing what you're
right?
telling yourself. Mm.
Yeah. And again, it's just because our brain thinks it's data. So whenever we put it on a piece of paper, that's always a
Good
really
start.
great first step. Um, is just so you can see it. You don't even have to change it if you don't want to. Just see
Mhm.
what happens if you write all your thoughts down on a piece of paper. You don't have to be like, okay, I'm gonna change my whole mindset today. Just like
Start there.
write down
Start
a few
somewhere,
thoughts.
right?
This right there, just to gain awareness. That is always the first
Mhm.
step, is gaining awareness, and again, like, an action item would just be checking in with yourself throughout the
Yeah.
day of, like, "What am I thinking right now? What am I feeling right now?" Because our thoughts are always creating our
Mhm.
feelings, and lots of times we say, "Oh, how do you feel?" And then we just say a bunch of thoughts. Feelings are one word, right? Sad, happy,
Confused,
energetic,
disappoint
disappointed,
yeah.
uh, right? Feelings are one word. And so lots of times we say, "How do you feel?" And then we list off all of these thoughts. And so what you could start doing is during the
Mhm.
day, you kind of check in with yourself. Be like, "What am I thinking? And how is it making
Yeah.
me feel?
What am I
What
thinking?
do I want to think?
Yeah.
And how do I want to be feeling?" Right? And just check in and see what is going on in your brain and in your
Mhm.
body, because our feelings happen in our body.
Yeah.
So those I would say are two great
So
starters. Thought dumps and check-ins, just to gain
s
awareness of, like, what's
yeah, you were
happening.
saying our feelings are what our body feels, not necessarily what our brain is telling us to feel. But our thoughts are in our
Yes.
brain,
Big
which then connect to our feelings, right? Did I get that correct?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, we're I'm assuming most of your listeners
Mhm.
are members of
Yeah.
the church, and so okay. So the example I love to use is the spirit, right? We all know what the spirit
Mhm.
feels like, and it's a physical feeling in our body. And I this is philosophy of Annabelle. It's not doctrine, but I think that the spirit is a really, really great teacher for us of what our physical feelings in our perfect world, that's how we're going to be feeling our feelings. We'll be able to identify them so
Mm.
quickly because of physical sensations happening in our body.
And it
We're not
connects to
like,
our thoughts. I feel like for me it's like it's a clear distinct thought and sometimes it is still hard to question it. I someone told me like usually the first thought could be from the spirit, the second thought might be Satan trying to get you to not to do the good thing, and the third thought is you trying to decide what to do between the two. But our thoughts like you said are so fast, but I like the idea of I think that's like fasting, or if you've ever tried that, even if you're not a member of the church, like fasting just for a spiritual purpose in general gives your body control over your spirit and how powerful it is. I mean, that's why people are cold plunging. I think
yeah,
I've mentioned this in every podcast episode the past few weeks, and I did it for a
yeah,
time, and maybe I'll get back into it. But it's just like for me a visual example again of what my body's doing versus my mind. So I love that you said
yeah.
that we can focus
And
on that. Go ahead.
you can feel something,
Mhm.
right? You physically can feel it. And so that's what, when I say, like, how are you feeling? Like, eventually you'll be able to identify disappointment that quickly too.
Mm.
Eventually be able to identify joy that quickly too.
Oh, okay.
Or probably a lot of us can identify what adrenaline
Mm.
feels like, right? You're feeling very adrenalized or excited, and or like I bet a lot of us could describe what
Mhm.
anxious feels like, and it's like, oh, I feel tightness in my chest and kind of my blood's moving really
Mhm.
quick. That's a really easy
Yeah.
one for me to identify. And my blood's moving really quick, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm feeling anxious. I wonder what I'm
Mhm.
thinking that's
Feel this
making me
way.
feel so
Yeah.
anxious. Instead of telling ourselves that we're feeling something and then listing off a bunch of thoughts.
Yeah.
Because that makes it feel like it's not changeable, right?
Mm.
If if our if our feelings are thoughts, then they're not changeable. But because our feelings are separate from our thoughts, because our thoughts are creating our feelings, then there's something
That
happening in
we can
between.
tap into and
So
control,
that
right?
we can tap into and question, control, experience, feel,
Mm.
understand, right? The goal isn't just like, let's get away. The goal is like, oh, this is really interesting.
Understanding, totally. You don't need to get rid of it,
Understanding.
and that's the point you started out with. It's like you are human. You are going to experience every color of the spectrum of feelings probably, like, throughout different
Yeah.
parts of your life.
And the more aware you become, the more you're going to feel, and the better life gets, because you can only feel as great of joy as you can feel as great as pain. Like, that is the most classic church principle, but it's also taught in the life
Hmm,
coach school, right?
interesting.
Like, it is taught in the best life
Just
coach industry in the
how
world. They're taking this
biologically
principle
our brains.
of,
That's amazing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so science, of course, backs up the
Yeah.
gospel. But as you, like, become more aware, yeah, it is gonna be uncomfortable, and if you're feeling uncomfortable, nothing has gone wrong. Like, I think that's our greatest fallacy of humans is we think if we're feeling uncomfortable, something has gone wrong,
Yeah,
um,
totally.
and it just hasn't. And our job in that moment is to be curious. "Huh,
Hmm.
wonder what I'm feeling. Why? Maybe this is a time for me to have compassion with myself. Maybe it's a time for me to think positive. Maybe it's a time for me not to," you know?
Yeah. Is it
And there's not a one size
yeah.
fits all. It's not a one thing works every time.
My mind kinda went to the opposite of that of, is there ever a time where it's okay to be hard on yourself?
I would ask, what do you think?
Ugh, for me, I'm like, I think I'm too hard on myself all the time, but it feels so justifiable. Like, I just can list 1,000 reasons why I think that about myself or why I believe that. And then it's like, well, that makes sense, you know? But like, there's a song I love and it's called You're Not Your Mistakes. And I try to remember that, but I'm like, but if what I do is what I am, then I am, you know? But I've been trying to like separate those. And I focused on this a while ago in my life, but I mean, it's so easy to forget if you don't build it up, but I wanna hear from you.
Yeah. So that's really interesting because for you, as well as for everybody, as well as for myself, we never really, you get zero benefit from being hard on yourself,
Mm,
right? Like, are you served at all? Not just you, but
mhm,
everyone listening, like, is anyone served by anyone being hard on them? Like, if you could do it with love and compassion and get a greater result, then is there any point in being hard?
mm,
And what I would
yeah,
say is no. There's never, you don't get any, like, the cost benefit is just, there's just none,
hmm,
right? And this is actually really interesting because, again, most of my clients are, they come to this point where they're like, but I don't want to be too nice to myself because then I'm going to be ignorant.
hmm,
Or I don't want to be too nice to myself because then I don't want to be too nice to myself because I want to be humble. And I'm like, okay.
hmm.
So you think Jesus was over there beating himself up to be humble?
No, of course not. Hmm,
No. And like, it just goes against the science. That's the other
hmm,
thing is like, if you do it enough times, it goes against the science. Like, if you watch
mhm,
yourself, okay, I'm thinking,
yeah,
I'm not doing a good enough job. You feel bad. You don't take the action. You avoid doing it. You do it
yeah,
halfway. You create the result of not doing it as much as you want
mhm,
to, right? So you prove it true every
yeah,
time. And so the science itself just shows that if you're being hard on yourself, you're never going to get the result that you really want.
interesting. And
And by being kind to yourself, you're gonna always stretch yourself. You're gonna always have
mhm,
goals and
yeah,
desires. And if you're being kind to yourself, those aren't gonna go away. You're a human.
yeah,
Like, I've just decided I'm never not gonna have the thought that I need to be better.
hmm,
And I just have decided that's not a problem. And that's actually my benefit because I don't have to spend any more time
about being
worrying
better.
about being better. And I don't have to spend any time worrying that I'm gonna run out of goals or I'm gonna stop
But
changing. Right? Like, that's just not an option.
instead you're focusing on just what are you doing today? What are you thinking today? And what
Yes.
direction do you wanna go in?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and who am I being today? Who am I being tomorrow? Who do I wanna be in 4 weeks? Like, how's that person gonna be showing up
Mhm.
different?
Yeah.
And I just don't have to spend any more time
Worrying about that.
telling myself that.
Interesting. This is
Yeah,
I feel
telling
like I've
myself that I
heard
need.
things like this, but it's so interesting to hear you talk about it in this certain way because I feel like I think most of us have been trained to that first thought of,
I think it's
yeah, we think
gonna
it's
help
gonna
us.
help us. You're right. So, I had 2 thoughts. One was I can't remember the first thought, but the second thought was there was this time in my life where me and my friend would like he was into this idea of writing down what you were going to do the next day as if you had already accomplished it. So it's like, oh, I called this person and asked them about their job, or I did this, and you do it the night before or the morning of. So it's like you've already done it and
Mhm.
accomplished it in your mind. And I love that thought. I think that's probably my takeaway today is just like, what would I what would I be doing or acting if I had this habit down, right? And I haven't read Atomic
Yeah.
Habits yet, but I've heard bits and pieces about it. And it kind of is replacing habits, but also like it doesn't have to be as hard and strenuous as we think. Like you said, like to change and become better, it's like, oh, I need to do this and I need to do this. It's more so of like kind of evaluating where you're at and then from there moving forward. Okay, go ahead.
And let's just acknowledge the reason we all wanna change what we're doing is because we wanna feel
Mm.
better about ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay? So it's gonna take us back to our thought line, and that's why focusing on today and how you wanna be thinking and treating yourself today is so important because you're after something you're never gonna get if you're telling yourself that you just wanna be better because you're always gonna be having that thought for the rest of your life, so you're never going to get
Mhm.
there because it's the thought that you're after, it's not the actual action that you're after. So if you're really wanting to change to feel better, that's why it's easier than you think it is because you don't have to change everything to feel
You can
better.
feel good now
You can
with
just
where you're
change
at.
the way that you're treating
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah. Wait, say that last thing again. It
Yes.
got jumbled and I talked over you. Sorry.
Oh, I just said the only thing you have to change is the way that you're treating yourself and talking to yourself. That's then you can feel better today and change the way that you're seeing
Mm,
yourself, seeing your what you're doing. What are you already doing that you're proud
yeah.
of? Right? What are you already doing? And we do all of this so that we can feel good because when we feel good, then we're like, "Oh my gosh, I can do this too, and I can do that too, and I can oh my gosh, maybe I'll actually take a break today because I did this. Now I'm gonna go read my book, and wow, now I read my book for 30 minutes. I feel so fueled. I'm ready to go talk to all these people and share with them what I just read
Mhm.
in my book,
Yeah.
right? Because if we just go, 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 always doing better, 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 we never have time to slow down. We never have time to talk. We don't have the space to think about what
Mhm.
we don't have as much space to think
Mhm.
of what we can get
Yeah.
outside of
Wow.
us.
This is so
So,
powerful.
yeah, let's just acknowledge that the reason we all wanna be better and change is because we all wanna feel
Mhm.
better. And that's why learning about your thoughts is so powerful because your thoughts create your feelings, not your circumstances, not your life, not the actions you're taking, not the actions you're
Mm.
not taking, just what you think about it and what you're thinking about yourself because of it.
Mic drop right there. For real. I'm so excited to put these on quote templates. That's like part of my favorite things with these.
True, so fun.
I feel like we need a part 2 segment too of like what you're putting in your body and how that's affecting how you're feeling because just like the nutrients, like I've been deep diving into all of this and I was off sugar and then back on sugar and just that contrast of how I handled things in my life was drastic. And I'm like, okay, so now moving forward, I'm like, I'm not going to totally cancel sugar out of my life, but it's like now I have this better mindset of where I want to be and what thoughts and what it looks like. And I don't have to beat myself up if I'm not going to be perfect at it. Or like my goal is to meditate every day and I've missed a few days. But I was like, you know what? That's okay. I'll just do it today and go from there. But do you have any final thoughts as we wrap up today? Or like maybe
Oh,
one of your biggest
any
takeaways? We've gone through so many golden points, but what are some lingering thoughts?
well, I just think the golden takeaway is, like, we get so we think everything's harder than it actually is.
Mhm.
And first of all, we think we're further away from where we wanna be than you like, than you
Mm.
actually are. And the second is just like, we're all human. And so instead of trying to fix things and change things and tell yourself you need to change who you are or where you are, or you need to change your perspective, or you need to, if I just had a different outlook on this, or like, instead of trying to change a person or the way things
Mhm.
are, just give yourself space to be a human, give yourself permission to be a human and have the experience that you're having. And when we give ourselves that space, then then suddenly our perspective
Yeah.
opens because we're not in a battle
Yeah.
anymore, right? So I think and at the beginning you brought up like what would I say to my
Yeah.
friend and that question of like what would I ever say this to my friend? And I think an even higher level question that has helped me so much is if my friend did say this, what would I say to them?
Mm.
Right? If they were saying this thing that I'm
About
thinking right
yourself?
now, how would I show up? Yes, like, if I'm
Oh,
thinking, "Oh, I don't look good
yeah.
today," or "I'm not doing as much as I should," or "Dang it, this totally just fell through and I totally failed and I should have been better," that's when you gotta ask that question, "If my friend was saying this to me, what would I offer them? How
That
would I show up for
compassion
them?"
and love.
And I guarantee you it will not be, "You're the worst, pull it
Right.
together. Let's
Right.
look at this in a positive light,"
Yeah.
right? It would be like, "I'm so sorry.
Mhm.
What do you think? Like, do you really think that's true? Do you really think that you've totally failed, or what do you
Hmm.
think?" Right? Like, we immediately drop to compassion and
Yeah.
love, and then suddenly they're willing when they're ready, they're willing to look at the other things that are working, and you can be like, "Well, you know what I think? I think you're amazing. I think you crushed it, and here's the reasons why." And they're like, "Yeah, you're
Yeah.
absolutely right."
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, it goes a long
So,
way. It really does.
I think that would be, like, that question in and of itself of if you wanna develop more love and compassion for yourself or for other people, and you just wanna have more richness in your life and feel more love in your life, asking that question of, "If my friend was saying this, how would I show up for them? What would I say to
Yeah.
them? What would they need?" And then give it
Oh,
to yourself.
man, that is a powerful example, and we really don't think about that too often because we're
Yeah, because 'cause we're always
caught up in our
about our mind.
thoughts. Yeah. Oh,
Yes.
man. And just, like, the little validation, like you were saying, goes a long way. The other week, I was, like, fatigued at my workout, and I was like, "I'm off sugar. Why am I not feeling so amazing?" Like, I'm trying, but it's not working. My coworker, she just was like, "You know what? Like, you're human. Like, it's okay to feel fatigued on some days or excuse me, or not be as productive. Like, that's just part of being human." Because sometimes I feel like I'm a hypochondriac, but like, be human and listen to the song by Cody Johnson about being human. It's so beautiful. I actually listened to it last night, but I love those final thoughts and takeaways. And I appreciate your example for everyone and for me. Like, I can't wait for more people to follow along with you and the things you teach and learn. And I'm assuming you're taking more clients. If anyone wants to, I highly recommend Annabelle. And just
Always. Yeah, if you wanna go get them, absolutely. Message me. I do a free consult, which is really
That's
fun
awesome.
always. You don't lose anything
Yeah.
from that, you just
Yeah,
learn about
totally.
yourself,
And you
and
mentioned that like you see
it's so
your own life coach too, and you'll do it for your whole life just because like we're not meant to do this on our
probably.
own, right? Like you said, it's so hard to to have that coexistence with our human and with where we want to be. But when you have someone else buoying you up
Yeah.
and supporting you along the way, it just makes it that much more attainable and it helps you change
Yeah.
your thoughts. So I'm so grateful that you helped me today in so many things and ways. And I hope everyone today
Oh,
enjoyed this episode. And yeah, thank you so much, Annabelle.
thanks for having me, it's so fun. I would say the last thing
Please.
I'll say is that it's so interesting because when I say all of these things, like, everyone should know I'm not perfect
Hmm.
at them. Like, when I say them, I'm speaking from my coach brain, right? Like, this is the science, this is what I've
Yeah.
studied, but I'm a human too, and that's why it's so fun for me to do conversations like this because I'm like, "Wow, that was really wise." Like, I should practice that too, you know? And I think that's really important for everyone to know who's listening to conference talks, they're listening to scientists, they're listening to school, they're listening
Hmm.
to anything. Just remember that that person is speaking from their highest level of expertise in that moment, and not to compare yourself to
Hmm.
that, and instead just use the tools that they
Use
offer
the
you.
what?
Just like the use the tools
Hmm.
that they offer you because they're trying to use those own
Right.
tools. They're not
And
perfect at
that's what you do as a life coach. And
it. So,
I think you're so credible because you have put in the time and effort and it's worthwhile. And I'm so happy you're sharing it with us.
well, thanks for having
Thank
me
you,
on. It was so
Annabelle.
fun.
Have a great day, everyone. See you later.